Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya Master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And Anne-Marie, you'll remember that especially last year, we had a lot of medical personnel on the show. I mean, probably 10, 15 visits from various people in the medical industry. This year, it's been kind of quiet on that front. I think we've had maybe 2 or 3. So I don't know. It kind of seemed like we were due for another one. And so we have Dr. Francisco Guerrero, who's a doctor of chiropractic and a life coach too, joining us today, kind of resetting that old that old trend that we had going before. And do you remember, Anne-Marie, how at one point I was talking about we should do like a medical panel and get all these different people from the medical practitioners industries all together in one place and talk about like the state of healthcare today and the state of medicine, Eastern medicine versus Western, and all that kind of stuff. I never got around to doing that. Why is that?
That would be, I don't know. Well, time goes by quickly, but that would just be such a good subject, wouldn't
It
it?
would be, yeah. It'd be really interesting to do that. So it's kind of like percolating in the back of my head. One of these days, maybe I'll just say, "All right, gotta do it," but I haven't done that yet. That's all right. Maybe today's the kickoff for that. Who knows?
I think so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that will debate on that versus Eastern and Western, and a lot of people in the Western side of things would not step on stage with the Eastern-minded practitioners.
This is
Because
true.
with the debates, they just know they won't be able to handle it with the truth coming out, and yeah,
It's a challenge. That's what makes it so interesting. And actually, to be honest, I mean, people who come onto this program are already people who have, to one degree or another, kind of taken at least a toe step outside of mainstream medicine. So usually that crew is not somebody who's going to shy away from that kind of discussion. But you're right. If you just talk to your average MD in the middle of the mainstream, they're probably not going to want to go into this conversation. That would be a little bit of a challenge for some people.
there's a good video on YouTube. You can look it up, The Great Debate. It's what it's called, and it's with Reggie Gold and versus medical practitioners, and that's a good leeway to understand what chiropractic is versus what medical Western medicine is, and it's a very good debate. So it'll give you a good idea of what it is.
Well, that's actually a good starting point for our conversation then. So first of all, let's find out a little bit more about you, Francisco. First of all, how did you become a chiropractor? What led up to that? And then kind of cue us in your viewpoint of, all right, what are the differences between typical mainstream medicine and chiropractic?
So what got me into chiropractic is, I like to say, it chose me in a way. I was curious about it in high school and never really thought about it afterwards until undergrad. I was pursuing just more going along the lines of just the healthcare system. I didn't know where exactly specifically. But then we had a guest speaker that was a chiropractor, and he just persuaded me even more to go more in that route. And at first, I was doing it for the wrong reasons, the wrong intentions. I was doing it for the money, the income, the salary, just like what any other undergrad student would look at,
Mm.
calculate first before they pursue a college degree or a career or a profession. So I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And once I was in chiropractic school, I actually found my true passion, and I loved what it had to offer. So with that being said, I don't take any insurance. I would do this for free as my way to serve humanity, to heal naturally versus um, the other alternative way, which is more the Western side of things, where they're going to medicate you, give you surgeries, drug you up, or cut you, slice you open, which is necessary sometimes for emergencies, but
Sure.
not for every little thing. I'm not here to scare anybody. A lot of people are just scared to, they fall victim of fear-based healthcare. That's what they do. Even with the chiropractic profession, especially the ones that are taking insurance, they go based off symptoms and pain, and that's going to bring fear into somebody, and that's going to bring more easier persuasion and court. I can't think of the term, but it's going to be easier to persuade people um, into their treatments. Which I'm not treating anybody. I believe the body can heal on its own. as long
Mm.
as there's no interferences within the spinal cord and brain connection and the spiritual connection, the universal connection that's out there with our innate intelligence that's within us. As long as there's no interferences, then our bodies are infinite. Um, it's infinite. There's infinite ways to heal and be at a higher potential in life.
When you mentioned spiritual, one of the first thoughts that came to my mind was another chiropractor, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Are you familiar with his work?
Yes, I actually got a couple of his books, but I haven't really studied him too much. I've listened to
Mhm.
a couple of his audios, but yeah, he's a great dude. He used to be a
He's
chiropractor, but now he's doing all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's not really doing the chiropractic anymore, but that's how he got into all this. And the way he got into chiropractic was he got hurt. He was in an Ironman race and got sideswiped, I believe, and was told he wouldn't walk again and so forth. And then basically ended up healing himself, and that got him onto the chiropractic path. So, yeah, people come
It's a
into it from a
powerful.
variety of different angles.
Yep. It's through the power of belief. As long as you believe, you can achieve anything,
Let's
including
talk
your.
about that power belief. Why do you think that power belief is so powerful? I mean, this is a topic we talk about from a lot of different angles here on the program, but from your perspective, in your career, in your career path, conversations you've had with others, your own experiences in your own life, why do you think belief is so important?
It's super important because I don't think they really teach us that in public and society here, especially in the United States. They program us to think a certain way, very limiting way, especially if you go through the public school system like I was.
Mhm.
They kind of program you into believing a certain political system, a certain way of life, um, different classes. There's certain beliefs with race, ethnicity, the classes,
Mhm.
um, depending on your income level as well. So it's in a way just like the matrix, and sometimes we get stuck, especially in a vulnerable stage at a young age where we just get that programming in us. And sometimes we need to unlearn that to um, believe in a better version of ourselves, that we can achieve anything, we can heal from anything, become anything that we want, and attain anything we want in life. So sometimes we just got to deprogram ourselves, which is super important. We got to unlearn what we were taught in the past with our parents, with the school system, and have and let go of those limiting beliefs that we've developed over time. So
And we're not talking about a small challenge either. I mean, when you're talking about doing that deprogramming or reprogramming, depending upon how you want to look at it, it can be pretty major because that stuff's kind of built into our nervous systems. It's like it's deeply ingrained into our neurology. It's not something that I'm just going to click my fingers and I'm going to change my whole belief system. It doesn't quite work that way.
yeah, it takes a lot of time, a lot of work. It's not as easy as it sounds. So there's a lot of work behind it, and it's an everyday journey too, because we're just surrounded by all that mediocre stuff, the
Mm.
average Joe stuff. Just it's kind of hard to avoid that. So it takes work every day, especially within ourselves.
Well, that's where it all starts. I mean, you really can't do any of this kind of work without going within.
True. Yeah,
I mean,
that's why I'm
that's the
saying
root of
it's
it.
so hard because we're just surrounded by it, especially with TV, social media, mainstream media. It's always just
Mm.
trying to get you caught up in all that, trying to get you to control the uncontrollable when
Mhm.
we should be focusing on what we can control in life. And that comes from within what we can do with our actions.
One of the things we love here on the program is any kind of personal stories or stories from our experiences because, well, first of all, we're human beings. We love stories. That's fun. Stories are the basis of our entertainment. They're the basis of so much of the way our culture, not here in the U.S., but other cultures around the world are built. They're all built around stories and storytelling. So I was hoping maybe you could kind of dig into your background, share some stories about, what were some of the seminal moments in your own personal development or in the development of your career path that kind of stand out to you along the lines of what we're talking about here?
So with me, I grew up with parents that were immigrants. They didn't have a great education, so they always thought putting me in just like an educational um, school system was gonna, benefit me the best way possible. But
Mhm.
it was not the best thing for me. I just had to get through the loops and the hoops just to become a chiropractor. You got to go through the school system. You got to go through the system to become a doctor of chiropractic or any other doctor in general. So with me, I knew I was not that type of person to love school. I just had to get through it. I was actually a C student, um, so I wasn't the best. I was just more. I don't know if I was ADD or dyslexic or anything like that, but I was not the best. I was actually, I kind of cheated my way through like high school, a little bit of, and it was a terrible thing. And I do regret doing that because it did catch up to me and like it developed poor
Mm.
habits, made me lazy. Um, so I definitely do not recommend that for anybody to do. Just do the right thing. Always do the right thing, and life will just bring you. It would reward you. It's not going to bring you any karmic debt. So
Well,
I
plus, I mean, if you take that shortcut like you were describing that you ended up taking, it probably came back to haunt you at some point because you have reached this certain level of knowledge or whatever, and then you go on to the next level, and they assume that you know that knowledge, and you don't. Now all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm further behind than I thought I was going to be, or something along that line. Something comes up that basically points to, geez, I really wish I hadn't done that.
yeah, it catches up. Sometimes whatever they teach at school is not what you're going to necessarily use
Yeah.
in the future as well. So at the same time, it was okay to get around the hoops, and there's always ways to you know just not do what they're trying to teach you.
Mm.
Especially if it's the instructors out there that are living hypocritical lives. They're trying to teach you, but they're not really living in alignment to what you really want in life. They're just being hypocrites. They're not healthy themselves, but yet again, they're trying to teach you about health and trying to teach you how to be a better person, but they're not even bettering their own lives. So they're just trying to collect a paycheck. So I grew up with a poor family. They didn't get educated. I had rats around my head. My grandma slapping or getting a broomstick and just trying to um, kill the rats that were around me. That was just one story that I've heard in the past before. I also grew up with asthma, so I wasn't really the best athlete. I healed from that through just being active and just through natural means and a little bit of medical stuff with the inhaler and the oxygen machine. I went through the medical system as a kid. I was vaccinated as a kid, like most people are. Um, every time I would get sick, I would go to the um, the medical clinic and just get the pills and the potions. Sometimes I wouldn't want to go to school just to skip out and play video games, and I would get the pills, potions, and injections. So, um, yeah, we grew up in the apartment complexes, and then my parents just opened up their own business, and they made it through when inflation wasn't too high, and
Mhm.
now it's just completely different. And yeah, now I went through schooling, and now we're here.
Mm. Yeah, and then it's been, especially the last 20 years, have been fairly much of a roller coaster, one that I experienced personally, and I know many other people have as well. So I get what you're talking about there. Um, I'm also curious to know about the fact that you just said you had experienced asthma and you managed to heal that. Talk about that. How did you manage to heal asthma? Because there are people who have had asthma all their lives. And they're saying, "Well, I never was able to heal it. What did he do that I couldn't do?"
There's different ways around it. I think just depending on your nutrition, there's nutritional stuff that you can do. Um, there's like like home remedies that you can do. I remember kind of we're in Mexico and they gave me like some type of soup. It was skunk. It was made out of skunk. I think it was,
Wow.
yeah, it was weird. I kind of vaguely remember because I was so young, but they gave me that. Um, Also, I believe that the just being active and working out your lungs helps out with asthma. Of course, you got to be cautious about it and not um, just go below your oxygen levels and not have enough oxygen in your lungs while you're um, exercising. So you got to be careful with that. But I think playing soccer as a young person just helped me develop stronger lungs as well.
Okay. Yeah. So you
It's,
don't want to push it too hard, but you want to push it a little bit.
yes, you want to challenge yourself.
Hmm.
Um, just working out your lungs in general is super healthy, especially with anybody with cancer. You want to be oxygenated within yourself
Mm.
to kill off all that stuff in there and just naturally detox. And chiropractic as well can help with asthma because there's nerves that are connected to your lungs. Your spinal cord and your brain is your master control system. So you want that connected the best way possible because there is nerves connected to your heart, to your lungs, all your organs, your cells are connected and being branched off through that spinal cord brain connection coming from your nerves. So you want to make sure everything's functioning properly.
Not the cancer or asthma or anything like that, but I've been dealing with my own stuff in the last 6 months or so. I have a situation with my right Achilles that has basically been in a deterioration that has occurred over time. I didn't have a particular injury or something like that, but I'm very, very tall. So posture issues have been involved and just different ways that the body tends to compensate. I've been learning a lot from my physical therapist, and she's a doctor of physical therapy. And my goodness, the different ways that just those aspects of the body are connected together are almost mind numbing. So as you're talking about how the nervous system is connected into the lungs and all that kind of thing, it's like, yeah, well, okay, I get it. I mean, it's all interconnected.
Yes,
Which is kind of interesting because we tend to think of them all as different systems, don't we? We go, well, like there's the circulatory system and there's the endocrine system and there's this and that, and they all tie together. It's almost like you can hardly even tell where one begins and the other ends. We have these almost arbitrary ways of describing that they're different, but they're really all very much part of the same thing.
yeah. We're connected to the universe. We're connected to the innate intelligence. We're connected to each other. The law of proximity is true. And a lot of the times we disconnect from that because we become specialists to one area, especially the medical field. There's like heart surgeons, there's
Mhm.
liver specialists. They just tend to section off everything, but in reality, everything is connected. So if something is off up here, then it's going to affect something down there as well. So we can't just check down here. Can't just check your liver and cut it open and try to solve it. What if it's something up here that's causing that as well? So
And the challenge, I would imagine, is trying to connect those dots, so to speak, because we're talking about lots of dots.
yeah,
Right? I
and
mean, we're not talking about a few hundred, we're talking about probably tens of thousands of different kinds of dots.
exactly. And you got to be very intuition. You got to be very intuitive with that. You can't just be mechanistic and just think of us as human beings as robots because we're much more intelligent than that. We got to connect the dots, like you said. And
Let's
that's
let's talk a bit more about that intelligence of the mind, intelligence of the being on the one hand, and the intelligence of the body on the other hand, because that to me is what you're referring to. Because there is there's sort of a realm of thought that says, well, the body has its own intelligence. But you're also going a little bit beyond that. You're talking about the consciously involved being tying into the way the body works, right?
yeah. So the body is going to deteriorate. We're all going to die. The body's going to be buried underground, 6 feet underground. And, we're not going to be able to talk. We're not going to be able to see. We're just going to be laying there. Our spinal cord, our brain, everything, our skeletal system is still going to be in the coffin after many years. It takes longer for the skeletal system to deteriorate. So it's still going to be there. That's your physical aspect. That's your body. Your mind, your brain, if you preserve it with certain like chemicals and stuff like that and donate it to science, people are still going to be able to study your brain. So that's still your mind, your brain. That's still part of the physical aspect. But the spiritual, the innate intelligence, your soul, that's That's what's really controlling the physical aspect, and that's what I really focus more on and try to teach people that I'm not here just to help you relieve your symptoms, your physical stuff, and because we're so much more than that. Uh, and not all of us know where we're going to go afterwards, after we die, in this short temporary time that we have here on Earth. I don't know if anybody knows really. So that's the intelligence that I'm referring to, the innate intelligence within us, with the universal intelligence around us that created us, the universe, um, the stuff that the scientists can't really truly explain. Because the true elite scientists or elite medical people out there, they don't know all the answers to. So there's much more intelligence out there. And that's the beautiful thing about this life, that we get to continually learn every day. Every day is an opportunity to learn because we don't know everything. We're imperfection beings trying to find our purpose in life. So
That's true. In chiropractic school, do they actually get into a spiritual side like that? I mean, I wasn't aware that they really did that. That's why I'm asking.
no, I had to learn outside from chiropractic school. So I found some good mentors and learning from other people outside of that are not chiropractors either. But
Hmm.
I did learn from handful of amazing chiropractors, because at the end of the day, those teachers at the schools, they most of them are not living in alignment. They're there to collect a paycheck because they were not successful in their own way. So that's where everybody has to realize that everybody that is trying to teach you something, you got to be careful and just take it with a grain of salt and ask yourself, do I really want to live the way they're living? And not a lot of us think about that in those terms whenever we're in that type of environment, or whenever we're listening to somebody or reading a book. We got to just first and think, do I really want to know more about this person if they're not in alignment? Or if I don't want to be that type of person?
That's an interesting point because I mean, I'll take it within the field of mainstream medicine. How many of us will go to a mainstream doctor and kind of give the doctor a once over and say, okay, how do I feel about this person's apparent state of health? Does this person seem like they're qualified from that point of view to help me? We don't ever think about it that way. We just wonder, well, what was their degree in? Did they have a specialty? What do they study in their specialty? But you're making a really valid point. If I mean, if you really do believe in whatever it is that you're practicing, whatever medical practice it is, theoretically, it should be working for you too. We kind of skip that.
Yeah. So with the people that are out there, let's say for an example, my brother-in-law is going through cancer right now, and they told him he only had a short amount of time last
Mm,
year that he would have to go to hospice. They said they gave him a couple months, but now
mm.
it's been I know y'all hear about these stories where they just give them a short period of time
Oh,
to
sure.
live, but they end up living longer, years later, because they didn't give hope. They believed, and they
Right.
changed their habits.
Right.
And these doctors that are telling these people you're only going to live this certain amount, like that's kind of wrong. They're playing God. So that's why we got to be careful who we listen to, because that's kind of bringing negativity into the person's mind, which is not going to help them out in the long run. And maybe they're trying to do a scare tactic into putting them in a certain treatment, because at the end of the day, those doctors have to get paid, they have to get compensated. So,
Right.
um, yeah, you got
And
to
that
be
is the
careful with
challenge.
the doctors out there as well that are trying to give you medical advice or any type of advice about your health, especially if they're not healthy themselves. If they got um, a big stomach, or if it's a man with man breasts, which is not normal, you got to be careful listening to those types of people, because
Mm,
that's not healthy at all.
yeah.
Obesity is not healthy. That's actually a disease. So you can look at somebody's teeth, somebody's eyes, somebody's skin, and you can easily tell if they're healthy or not. I know it's kind of judgmental, but it's obvious.
And to what degree should well, should is not the word I want to use here. Let me try to rephrase that. To what degree would you recommend that we not only pay attention to it, but act upon what we see and what we conclude from just a visual scan of the physician who's trying to help us?
To a high degree, because they're going to try to persuade you into doing something most of the time. Um, I mean, usually they just want to prescribe you or give you surgery, some extreme stuff. So hold it to a high degree, but also love on them as well. I'm not trying to tell you to judge them and be harsh. Just see it from your own perspective and their perspective, and just again with the intuition, follow your heart, follow your gut, your intuition into making the next decision. Don't let them make the decision for you because you know your body more than anybody else. So you want to make the decision within your own heart before you take a massive step um,
I love
into
that.
yeah
I
into
love what you're saying there because I mean, if Anne Marie's been having listeners don't know this, but Anne Marie's been kind of kicked in and out here. She's been trying to maintain internet connectivity, and the internet gods are saying, "Well, maybe not today." So at the moment, she's knocked off the platform. But if she was here right now, I'd be asking her about what you just said. Uh, that trusting in yourself, that learning to trust in yourself, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, it's something that we talk about a lot here on the program. Obviously, I mean, we're dealing with a lot of different topics, but they all kind of circle around the idea of different perspectives, different ways of thinking about things, different ways of believing about things, and how important those thought and belief processes are. Uh, but they certainly apply as much to medicine as they do to anything else. They certainly apply to health as much as anything else. And I mean, I think we have a fairly high level of appreciation of that. But even so, it's still not easy. I mean, part of the reason I asked you the question a moment ago is, well, if you're talking with a physician or you're talking with somebody in the medical industry and you're not really liking the way that they look, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to feel good about saying, well, thank you, doctor, but I'm out of here. I'm going to go find another doctor. It's one thing to say, I am not liking what I'm seeing, or at least to say it to oneself, but to actually take the action, that can be tough.
yeah,
Because, like you were saying earlier, we are programmed, we are trained to believe in the system the way it's put together. And you don't fight the authorities, and the doctor is an authority. That's the way people think about it.
yeah. So the doctors, some of them have a sense of entitlement, and just because they have a title, such as doctor, they
Mhm.
want to. They have that sense of controlling people, and they have that sense of authority, and people actually fall for that. They think that they're lower than them because they don't have that title, but that's not necessarily true. You can be better than them actually. Just because you have a title doesn't mean anything.
Mhm.
More successful in your own way. You don't even have to go to school to be successful, to be rich, to be successful in your own way, whatever that is.
That's true.
You don't have to be a doctor. There's plenty of doctors out there that are unhealthy themselves, including chiropractors, including the natural doctors out there, not just medical doctors. So just be more aware of that and mindful that you are powerful yourself, anybody. So just be aware. It's not just the medical field, anybody, the lawyers, business people, real estate agents. It's better to find a sober minded person that takes care of their health versus a drunk person or somebody that's on drugs that's trying to sell you on something, or persuade you into their business. It's better to find that sober minded person that actually cares for their lives, that doesn't neglect their lives. And it's not really hard to tell. You can tell by just simply looking at them, talking to them.
Mhm.
And again, you don't want to make those judgments by cover. You want to get to know somebody and also just, love on them at the end of the day. Love is a powerful energy frequency that we need to give out to others. And you don't have to just hate on a person. You want to help lift them up and help be a better example and inspire them to better themselves. So yeah.
Well, good stuff. Let's presume for the sake of discussion now that there's somebody listening, and there are probably quite a few who fit into this category, and they're dealing with some kind of a medical issue. And let's assume for the sake of discussion, it's not life threatening. It's just something that they've been dealing with for some time, and maybe they've consulted medical people about it. Maybe they've consulted alternative, natural healers or chiropractics or whatever, and they're still wrestling with it. You made a point a moment ago, and that's what I want to bring in here, that we can heal ourselves, that we really do have that ability within us, and I think it's an important thing to draw out, in part because of what we just talked about, that we do have this tendency in society to grant more authority to somebody who has that title. But for somebody who's willing to kind of take the bull by the horns and say, okay, I'm going to take steps to improve my own situation with my own health issue, whatever it is. How do you recommend they actually go about doing that? I mean, what can somebody practically do when they're dealing with condition X, whatever condition X might be?
Just be open-minded. You can't be closed-minded. You got to try everything you can. There's a lot of tools in the toolbox. Um, Even if you tried chiropractic or the medicine field or any other natural thing or remedy, just be open-minded into just simply by changing your habits. Or have you really even tried everything? Have you tried to solve, for example, what's your blood type? Are you eating the proper nutrition? Are you training well? Are you actually doing what you need to do to fulfill your purpose in life? A lot of people are not satisfied, or they end up sick or depressed or have anxiety because they're not aligned to their purpose, their mission in life, their journey in life. And once you are aligned to that, then you're going to be vibrating at a higher level. So it just it can be so simple by just taking simple steps, by just committing, being more disciplined, and just honoring yourself, listening to yourself, being more aware, intuitive to what it is that you need to do in life. And sometimes you got to embrace the pain, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you got to suffer to um, level up in life. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. You just got to be aware and realize what it is that you want out of life. A lot of people just give up hope, and they have they just self-sabotage. They don't want to feel or be present in their current reality, and they just destroy themselves not even knowing. They're just so unconscious of their decisions, and it doesn't help them move forward in life. So the thing is, you just got to be aware of what is really going on. Sometimes you got to try out different things in the toolbox, like I said, and just heal from within, and then help others heal as well, because that's the best way to heal as well. You got to help others. You got to serve others, try to feel and fulfill a bigger purpose in your life, and that's helping other people as well.
You also mentioned blood type a moment ago. Why did you mention that? What's important about that in this process?
That ties in with nutrition. So depending on blood type A, if you're blood type B or O, there's like a chart out there where you can just like base off what foods you can eat and what foods you should be avoiding. Like I'm blood type B, and apparently I'm supposed to be avoiding chicken, certain fruits and vegetables. So that's part of the factor of like what we should be eating as far as our nutrition goes, and what we should avoid to avoid inflammation in our bodies.
Is this based on actual science? I mean, I haven't heard of this. That's why I'm asking.
I believe so. I got recommended by this by another doctor, so I gotta look more into that. So I'm just
Hmm.
barely tipping my toes in the water with this. I'm not
Oh,
fully,
okay.
yeah, committed yet because I still eat chicken. I love chicken, so I try to eat organic as possible, but
Mm.
yeah, chicken is good to me still. Like peanut butter, for instance, I'm supposed to be avoiding peanuts. Um, Apparently, that causes cancer too. The peanuts are moldy, and so it's interesting stuff. it's out there. So yeah, that's something that I gotta look more into. But apparently, your blood type affects what we should be eating and what we should be avoiding.
Hmm. All right. Have to kind of table that for a bit and make a note and come back to visit that at some point because that was the first I'd heard of blood type influencing or the idea that blood type should influence what you eat. Interesting. I'll just make a note, a little check mark on that. Come back to that one later. You also mentioned the idea of certain foods that we want to stay away from that in your particular case that you should stay away from because of the blood type issue. And you mentioned I think it was peanut butter having possibly a cancer connection and so forth. We hear that kind of thing a lot, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it seems like half of the things in the universe cause cancer. Um, which kind of ties into what we talked about earlier. The fear factor doesn't come from just visiting your doctor. I mean, there's an entire establishment, including the insurance field, the pharmaceuticals, the FDA, and so forth. There's this whole range of people that are absolutely committed to scaring the crap out of us about all the different things that could cause cancer. As if that were the only disease that could actually cause you harm. But nevertheless, that's the one that gets all the big attention. I'll tell you honestly, one of the things that I have thought about over the years quite frequently is I wonder how much I should be ignoring what they're saying. Because I mean, that it's programming me all the time that they're saying that stuff, they're programming me. And
Yeah,
I'm wondering if the programming is maybe actually causing more harm than the actual substances themselves.
it definitely is. It's a constant program. It's just out there. It's hard to avoid. It's always on the mainstream media. So um, just you got to take everything with a grain of salt, especially in the mainstream media. It just seems to be fear factor everywhere, and they say that a lot of the things causes cancers, but even with that, like you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Like, how much chemicals are they spraying in our foods? Like, is it a large amount of dose, or is it just a small amount of
And,
dosage of all
and
these
how much is too much?
exactly? Because you can drink water, you can drink a lot of water, and you can die from drinking too much water, which would be a
Hmm.
large amount. And water is good for us too. So
Right. Right.
yeah, even in the air, sometimes they say whatever is in the air, they're spraying stuff, chemtrails, that's not good for us to inhale. They're finding all this metals in the testing waters, like they just put waters outside and they test the waters and they find all these chemicals. Eventually that accumulates and that's the oxygen that we're breathing. So the best thing we can do is just better ourselves and just detox ourselves and just be as healthy as possible, no matter what it is, and not live in that constant fear state, and just live the best way we can in the present moment, and not be caught up in the fear tactics, and you know, try to
Yeah.
do the opposite of what society is trying to teach us or program us, and see the beauty of things in life versus the scary things is very helpful. Just being in that positive frequency field versus the negative frequency. Just seeing the beauty of life.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, I make it my own practice to kind of look at where am I finding myself being scared the most, or where am I finding myself being programmed the most, and then regardless of whether or not there may actually be something there, I try to find a way to reprogram it. So you mentioned water, for instance. I've had a couple of people, one particular person I'm thinking of on the program, who advocated the idea of using hydrogen to heal the body that apparently has a number of valuable properties that aren't generally recognized by mainstream medicine. And in the course of that conversation, I got introduced to the idea of distilling water and then remineralizing the water with sea minerals and so forth. I started doing that. Now I don't know exactly how much I'm actually protecting myself. I mean, how much actual trace mineral or how much trace metal or whatever is in the water that I'm now avoiding because I'm distilling it, but I feel better for it. And when I say feel better, I don't mean necessarily that physically I feel stronger or healthier or whatever. I just feel better personally. I feel better energetically. My spirit feels better because I'm doing that. So I don't know if there's an actual connection between the physical activity of distilling water and then remineralizing it with healthy minerals that actually produces a result in my body as much as what is happening within my brain, because my brain is saying, oh, I'm doing this wonderful thing for myself. I'm actually taking myself into a better place because I'm giving myself healthier water. I don't know which one's more powerful.
Yeah. And again, that comes from belief. Like if you believe something is working, then it's more than likely going to work. Even it's kind of like a placebo effect as well.
Right. Yeah.
So, but water is good to distill. It's good to filter. So they studied bottles of waters. They've studied the faucet waters, and they find a lot of junk. They find actually birth control, Plan B substances, medical substances, um, prescription substances in the faucet water. So it's good to filter that water the best way possible. If not, we're going to be ingesting all that stuff, all that junk.
And I will say that I've been distilling water now for about, let's see, how long has it been? About 3 or 4 months. The water tastes a lot better. I mean, it just tastes good because, well, I mean, I'm always making it very consistently. I use the same mineral mix and so forth, the same electrolytes.
Nice.
So it's very consistent, but I don't know, it tastes clean. And there's something very appealing to that. There's something that makes me feel like I'm really doing something good. So I don't know whether that's belief or a physical thing. I'm not sure it really matters a whole lot. Uh, but what I do know is this: I'm following what feels good to me, and
That's
I think
beautiful.
that makes a difference.
Yeah. It could be belief or it could be actual facts. You're just knowing what's right for you. Sometimes you can taste the
Mhm.
difference between waters, good waters and versus bad waters. So,
And then
yeah,
you can taste it. I mean, I taste a huge difference. It's not small. It's a I mean, if I drink some of mine and I just drink some tap water, it's an obvious difference to me.
yeah.
We're not,
Versus
we're talking about like, oh my God, is this even water? Is this the same drink? It's that much of a difference.
yeah, versus whenever we just neglected and just whenever we're kids, we're just it's just water. It tastes all the same.
Right.
Now we can tell the difference, which is a good thing. Our taste buds are working, which is a good thing. Yeah.
That's something that I think also we need to trust more. Our senses are really very good at determining this stuff.
Mhm.
We don't give them enough credit, perhaps,
Yeah.
but we really do have the ability to, in a sense, mentally filter in or filter out what's good for us, what's not good for us, just by listening to what our senses are telling us.
Yeah. And chiropractic helps out with that. Just the spinal cord and the brain is bringing us senses. It's all connected to our skin. There's nerve endings to our skin, and that's how we feel pain. That's how we feel good. That's just one of the ways we can tune into those senses. Fasting, for example, is a good way to reconnect to our taste buds afterwards because we're not eating for a certain amount of time. Our taste buds are craving food, and um, you're just more grateful and uh, more in tune with those senses. So your sensation is very important, and you got to listen to that as well.
Well, and not just listen to it. I think probably the biggest challenge for me was learning to trust it.
Yeah.
Because again, we're taught so much by our society, by all the different media and so forth influences in our society, and we're kind of trained listen outside of ourselves. I mean, religion does that. Religion doesn't want you to go inside. In many cases, they want you to listen to the religious authorities or with the religious book or whatever. Um, it certainly is true within the political realm. You want to listen to the political authorities; they know what's best, or in the medical realm, or all the different realms. It's always look outside. It's always listen outside, and that is a very strong influence. And it's such a strong influence that the moment you do want to go inside and start listening to yourself, it can be a bit of a challenge. So, as important as it is to listen to your own senses, to your own data that you're taking in, it can be a challenge to believe it, to trust it because we have been trained to trust externally.
Yeah, especially the older generation, because all they knew is watching TV. That's all they got their information from
Mm.
was the TV, and that's who they trusted more. Those authoritative figures on the news media, or the priests, or the pastors in the churches.
Mhm.
but in all reality, a lot of them were exposed with stuff like emergencies such as the pandemic. A lot of them just fell for all that stuff, and it just exposed a lot of people's true colors, and especially at the church where they're just, trying to force people to do stuff that they're trying to force everybody to do whatever they're recommending, and it wasn't for everybody. There's never a one be all solution. There's always side effects to everything. Not everybody can handle the same thing that everybody is going to receive. So a lot of the people, the authoritative people, were exposed because um, they fell for that. And, like you said, the churches, the book, um, where was all that power, belief that they're preaching when something very worldly hit, such as the pandemic? Where was the belief of God? There's a higher intelligence, and um, the people. That's what really deterred me and listened to my intuition. It was just like, this isn't just because everybody's doing this doesn't mean that I have to do it. Like, no, like I'm not that type of person where I just get easily persuaded. I've always been hard um, to take authority from people because I would listen to my intelligence within me and the God that's outside of us, the universal intelligence outside of us, and my gut, my heart, whatever you want to call it. So a lot of that stuff got exposed, and hopefully people just learn how to, better listen to themselves versus people out there that are just weak minded physically. Like, we need better leaders out there to listen to, and a lot of these people out there in mainstream media, like, we got to recognize the weak leaders versus the strong leaders, and we need stronger leaders out there, especially men. Women, women are strong. Like, women are born strong. They bear us into existence, and they're stepping up throughout the whole 2020 stuff. But the men, um, they just seem non-existent, and we need to work on that um, to just develop better leaders for the future generations as well, and know
Uh,
who to listen to and not to listen to.
maybe I'm drawing an inference here that isn't accurate, but it sounds to me like you're suggesting maybe the younger generations are less influenced by the whole idea of what the authority has to say. Am I reading that correctly?
I think they're more influence. I'm not too sure. I'm a little in between that, but there is evil influences out there and there's good influences out there. So I'm hoping they're following the good influences and people can actually be that can actually teach the younger generations how to live a better lifestyle, um, versus living a sick lifestyle.
Mm.
There's a lot of it's all in the media, in the music and stuff like that. So it just depends on the parents, depends on what people are listening to and watching. So hopefully they have a better sense um, of that of a good influence.
As you were talking about that, I was reminded of something that I have talked about a lot here on the show, which is that there's an obvious trend that happens generation after generation, in that each succeeding generation demonstrates in one way or another that almost absorbing through their fingertips, so to speak, they know more, they've learned more, they've come into this world more knowledgeable than the previous generation, and it happens every generation. Every generation seems to know more than the previous one. So I mean, I kind of had that in the back of my mind when I was at, ooh, where's that coming from?
Sorry about that. That was my computer.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But anyway, I had that in the back of my mind when I was asking you about, whether or not you were suggesting that perhaps the younger generations are less influenced by authority, because I'm wondering if that's one of the things that perhaps is being learned differently or is being absorbed by generations differently. Maybe the younger generations are kind of moving away from from those authority-driven models and so forth. I don't know. I can't say I've actually observed that, but I'm kind of curious to know from your perspective, what have you seen there?
I think it could be ego. If they have a large ego, it's going to be harder for them to listen to their parents, for instance, or it could be coming from their parents. The parents are not respecting themselves, and they're teaching their kids how to not respect the parents because they're not respecting themselves. They're not being um, the better example. So it starts with the parents and how they shape their kids, the younger generations, and how are they living to that certain example to help those kids or the younger generations respect other people.
Something that kind of ties in that I've also remarked on at various times in the past here on the show is that there are alternative viewpoints and alternative experimentations and so forth where education is concerned. I myself actually was involved in founding a school a few years back that was quite revolutionary in that the students were in charge of the school. I mean, there were no administrators and teachers, dishing out the rules and all that kind of thing. The kids actually ran the place, and it was quite successful. It was based on a model that has had a number of different successes around the world. But I'm thinking specifically about a series of tests that were conducted initially in India and have since been conducted in countries around the world, in Europe, here in the U.S., number of different places around the world. The original test was I can't remember what the gentleman's name was. He was an educator from India. He put a computer in a very poor section of one of the larger cities in India at street level, and it was in a neighborhood where no English was spoken. There weren't, I don't think there were even any schools in the area. It was really, really quite poor conditions. And he put this computer in at street level, basically built into a side of a building, like an ATM or something along that line. And he put it at child level so that a child could go up and interact with it. And the computer was connected to the internet. And then he just left it for a year. There were no instructions. There was no, here's how you use it. He didn't even try to translate it into the local native language. He just left it there as an experiment to see what would happen. And came back a year later and found that the kids had discovered it. They had taught each other how to use it. They had taught each other how to speak and write English because it was in English, so that they could use the thing. And over time, they had learned so much that they had organized their own school so that they could teach each other what it was they felt they needed to learn, all without an adult telling them what to do. And that experiment has been replicated in a number of different ways in a number of different cultures and societies around the world with the same kind of results over and over again. That if you just get out of the way, give the kids access to the information and let them go at it in their own way, they'll pick it up, they'll learn it, and they'll put it to use in ways that kind of surprise you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Versus being institutionalized into a school system where they control what they feed the children's brains. Like this sounds more of like a homeschool method of that type of community where they can learn on them. They can learn on their own. It's kind of like a Montessori homeschool method, which is pretty cool. That's an interesting um, perspective with those Indian children.
Yeah, yeah, and it was replicated, I know, in India. I'm sorry, in Italy. It was replicated, I believe, here in the U.S., and I think it was replicated in a South American country, but I don't remember which one. But the same researcher just wanted to try it all over the place to see how universal it is, and he found it truly is universal. It crosses cultural lines, so it really doesn't matter what their background is, what they were trained, what the local religious beliefs are, what the political system is, what the economics are. Makes no difference. You give access to that kind of information, and the local kids run with it,
Yeah,
which I find to be very encouraging.
it's kind of like what you were saying before. It's kind of harder to listen to the authoritative figures because we have access to the phone, we have access to the internet.
Mm.
We can find any type of information. We can learn on our own through that. So it's gonna those people can learn anything they want versus something that's going to be forced into our minds that we don't even need in the long run. Most of the stuff they teach in public schools, like, I don't even use it. They don't even teach what we need to really know to survive out here in the streets,
This is true.
financially,
Yeah.
taxes, and computer science. Well, they teach
Mhm.
computer science and stuff like that, but there's certain things that they don't teach
Mm.
because I guess they don't want us to know. I guess the elites or the people that actually rule the world, they don't want us to reach a higher potential um, from within us, and and actually discover what can be unleashed from within. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we can learn on our own. And
It's true.
maybe
Yeah.
that's why it's harder for us to listen to those authoritative figures. Which I mean, we got to respect our elders. We got to respect our parents at the end of the day. So hopefully they have moral um, disciplines where they can still respect people, but take everything with a grain of salt of learning from other individuals that they don't necessarily need to learn from. Everybody has their own story, though. We can always learn from each other.
It's true. Yeah, very true. In fact, one of my former co-hosts once pointed out that there's really no need anymore to have schools teach anything that can be looked up in Google. I thought that was an interesting perspective. I mean, if you can find it in Google, what do you need the school for? And so now the question becomes, okay, so what are the schools for? And that is where it becomes quite the intellectual discussion. Probably a lot more that we could do in the next 3 minutes. So I'll leave that one alone for another time.
Yeah.
But a couple things I want to ask you before we part company. First of all, you mentioned earlier you're a coach in addition to a chiropractor. Tell us a little bit about that.
So with the coaching, I just try to help people heal from within. There's a lot of sick people out there. 70% of the population is actually obese, and obesity is a disease that leads to other diseases. It leads to comorbidities. So I'm here to help bring a better version of individuals through natural ways, through chiropractic, and just that's all stuff that we can throw in there as well. But my main focus with the coaching is to help you create the better version of you, the 2.0 or the 10.0 version of yourself through the stronger mindset, better disciplines, better habits, through training, physical foot, physical training, creating of workout programs specifically for you, and nutritional program as well. Counting and knowing your macros, which is your nutritional intake of how much are you eating. Like that's very important. A lot of people don't know how much they're eating, hence why they're not getting the results that they're getting with the physical activity that they're putting in. So
Mm.
I help you dial that in and help you transform your life, not just physically, but your mindset as well. We create a better individual. We're just creating that individual that you want to create. And I'm here to assist you with that process.
For somebody who does want to reach out to you, how do they find you?
They can find me on my Instagram at Dr. Francisco Guerrero. That's the best way to find me. It's my
Okay.
Instagram or Facebook.
Okay.
Also on TikTok. So Dr. Francisco Guerrero.
All right. I'll make sure that the Instagram handle is included in the show notes as well to make it easier for people to find you.
I got a YouTube too. I just started YouTube. So
Oh, cool.
trying to start my way with the social media stuff.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the computer world, right? You mentioned that before. That's where we are.
This is my first time using this StreamYard that you're using. So,
Learning
how's
stuff
it?
all the way.
You like
What's that?
StreamYard? You like StreamYard? Is it good?
Well, the reason I use the StreamYard, I actually like Zoom better in many ways, just because the quality of the channel is so good, the filtering is so good, and so forth. But there are two really good things that I like about StreamYard. First of all, I can stream to multiple locations. Zoom doesn't allow me to do that. And the second thing that I really love is I can put my intro and my outro right in the program. I don't have to tack it on later with editing, and I don't have to make people wait around while I upload it to the system and so forth. It's just right there. I click a button, boom. So those are the two reasons why I like StreamYard a lot. But I'll tell you honestly, if Zoom did those two things, I'd be using Zoom because I like everything else about Zoom. It's
Yeah,
just that they're missing those two pieces. But
gotcha.
anyway, yeah.
That's pretty nice.
What one other thing that I want to bring up with you too, and I like to mention this because I think it's something that gets missed a lot in today's culture, particularly the online culture. And you just mentioned how you're beginning to do more of the social media outreach and so forth. But this gets missed because you are among many people who are creating content. You're sending it out there into the world, into the wild, so to speak. And there are people who receive it and they consume it, and you never necessarily know about them. Sometimes you do. Sometimes they reach out, they want to interact with you as a coach, or they want to pick your brain about something. But most often, you never find out about them, and often they're able to help themselves because of it.
Yeah.
And we kind of skip that part. We don't really notice that part too much. We just figure, well, it's just part of the job. We got to put the content out there. And I said to myself one day, that doesn't make sense. We should be recognizing that.
Yeah.
So on behalf of those people that you've never met and that you've never seen, that you never will meet, you never will see, you've been giving this content to and helping them out and so forth in ways you didn't know about. I just wanted to thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in the world in ways that you don't even know about.
We got to provide some type of value. We can't just be doing this with the wrong intention. You got to want to do what we're doing for free. So you might be compensated later, but you want to bring value into people all the time. That's what you want to consume. You want to consume valuable information so that you can grow and learn constantly. If not, you're going to be wasting your time. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your value. You're a valuable person. I can tell. We just met, and I can tell that you bring a lot of valuable information to your audience. So it's awesome to be part of the show. I appreciate your time. Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope we can stay in contact as well.
I appreciate that as well. So, Dr. Francisco Guerrero, thank you so much for joining me and Anne-Marie while she was here. She couldn't stay connected, but for joining both of us here on the show and all the listeners, we really do appreciate it. And of course, we appreciate you guys, all you listeners out there. I don't say it often enough, perhaps, but I try to say it at the end of the show because, hey, without you guys, we wouldn't have a podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.